So we in the Disciples of Christ denomination, the Disciples tradition, we're known as the people of the parentheses. And that comes from our name, which is the Christian Church, and in parentheses, Disciples of Christ. It's a strange and funny name, I know, but it's done with a reason to identify who we are as a people. And so as the people of the parentheses, I want to identify this Sunday as the Sunday of the slash. What do I mean by that? As I mentioned, today we're celebrating Valentine's Day / Transfiguration Sunday / Mardi Gras Sunday. Now, these might seem like totally random things that are bunched together in one Sunday, but when we really look at the three of them, I think there is an interesting through line. Valentine's Day, as we know, is about love. And the Transfiguration is about a loving God taking human form to be with us. It's called the Incarnation. God is revealed through Jesus. Mardi Gras is about love too. Loving the blessings of life, the blessings of each other, the blessings of food, the blessings of music, and yes, the blessing of joy. Mardi Gras is a celebration. But while love is at the center of all of these three, I think Mardi Gras and the Transfiguration are a perfect symbol of each other. Mardi Gras cannot be captured as only one thing. Every part of the celebration is a blending of multiple identities, of multiple cultures, of multiple things. The day itself is a combination of ancient Roman festivals, of Christian traditions, and the influence of French culture. Mardi Gras means Fat Tuesday in French, which is the Tuesday of feasting before the fasting of Lent, which starts on Ash Wednesday. The food of Mardi Gras, as I highlighted last year with gumbo, spans across a variety of cultures like African, European, Caribbean, and the southern United States. Its music, again, is a melting pot of these same identities. Its transcultural identity is a perfect symbol for the Transfiguration. In one moment, God's divine essence appears through Jesus' human form, creating a figure that is both fully human and fully divine. The human Jesus, the divine God, creating the Christ. So both Mardi Gras and Jesus, through their own distinct individual identities, come together and form something new, all of it centered in love. But this morning, I want us to think about the Transfiguration, because it's more than just a cute parlor trick that God plays on Peter, James, and John. It's an important event that conveys an important message. Well, let's look at it and see what it might be saying to us today. Before Peter, James, and John traveled up that mountain with Jesus, it had been a tough time for the disciples. Peter had just correctly identified Jesus as the Messiah in a private teaching and was promised by Jesus to be the foundation of the church, the rock upon which the church is built. But this euphoria didn't last long, because the very next thing Jesus tells his disciples is that he would have to go to Jerusalem, undergo great suffering, and be killed. Now, imagine what this must have done to the disciples. It must have been extremely destabilizing for the 12 guys who have given Jesus their whole lives. They've given up their family. They've given up their profession. They've given up any stability they have to follow Jesus around and learn everything they can from him. Imagine what it must have been like to hear someone you love tell them they are soon to suffer and die. It's traumatic. No matter who it is, it's a traumatic thing to hear a person that you love tell you these things. And that's something that stuck out for me a couple weeks ago when we were in Alexandria at the capital area's Martin Luther King Day of Service. The region gave an award to Dr. King's former personal secretary, Miss Willie Pearl Mackey King. Reverend Rosetta was there and presented her with the annual award. But in her speech, she told a fascinating story about being at a hotel pool with Dr. King and his family. And as they watched his kids enjoy the pool, she recalled a sadness coming over Dr. King as he talked to her and said he wished he would be able to see his kids grow up to see what kind of parents they would be. She said, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "They're going to get me soon." Dr. King knew he was going to die. And it was startling because even these 60 years later, she's recalling that story and it's at the forefront of her mind. Now, there's a lot to this story. One thing that we can take from it is that this world doesn't accept those who teach and practice the radical love ethic of Jesus. The world has a way of getting rid of these individuals. But 60 years later, it's still at the forefront of her mind. It must have been a traumatic thing to hear those words come out of his mouth. And it makes me wonder about the mindset of the disciples after Jesus tells them that he is going to have to go to Jerusalem, undergo great suffering, and be killed. When people you love speak this way, it's disheveling, it's discombobulating, it's disheartening, and it bothers us. And in fact, I know it bothered the disciples because look what happens just moments later. Jesus tells the disciples this, and Peter steps forward, the rock upon which this church is built, and Peter rebukes Jesus for telling them this. He says, "That will never happen. I won't allow this. We won't allow this." And Jesus calls him Satan. It's got to be traumatic for these disciples. They have to be discombobulated. They have to be disheveled. They have to be disheartened. Now, Jesus did tell them that he would be raised by God, but I know that the disciples didn't hear that. They were still spinning about what he had just said. And I think that perhaps this message affected the disciples in their understanding of their work. I imagine some of their heart was gone. Maybe there was a new silence between everyone. Maybe they were arguing more vehemently between each other. It had to have an effect on everybody's relationship. Scripture doesn't say what happened. It just tells us that 6 days later, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up this mountaintop. And so I started to think about why Jesus would do this now. And I have to think that it was a purposeful teaching tool by Jesus. Sometimes teachers have to take dramatic action to break a behavior or a belief that's overwhelming their students. And Jesus does something dramatic. He gives Peter, James, and John a glimpse of the resurrection, a glimpse of the Christ, a glimpse of what is yet to come. And they get to hear God's voice identifying Jesus as the beloved Son of God. See, I think perhaps Jesus knew that his disciples were disheveled, discombobulated, and disheartened, and he needed to do something to ease their souls, to give them an uplifting boost, to show them that they were part of something that was much bigger than themselves. And so on that mountain, in that ordinary place, Jesus was transfigured. And that ordinary place was transfigured into sacred ground. God's glory shone through the ordinary and created a sacred extraordinary. This is a beautiful story to me, but it's also a living story. When we read the Bible, we're not reading a book that's frozen in time. We're not reading stories that are frozen in how they are written in the texts. We are reading a book about a living God who is still speaking to us today. God is still speaking through these stories that we read in this Bible that was written so long ago. See, we live right now in disturbing and disheveling times, where the world that we have always known is collapsing in on itself and illusions are being exposed. I know from our conversations that many of us, like the disciples, are feeling this dishevelment, this discombobulation, this disheartening moment. Many of us are feeling disillusioned, feeling sad, angry, empty, and probably a mixture of all of these things at the same time. But when his followers are like this, look at what Jesus does. He gives us a lift, a reminder of God's loving presence in the world and God's promise to sustain us in and through all things. He reminds us of the resurrected Christ. And I want to tell us this morning that like the resurrection, transfiguration is still occurring today in this Christ-soaked world. But what does that mean? What do we have to know then about being able to see Christ transfigured in our world around us? The first thing we have to know is that there is nothing we can do to make it happen except to prepare our own selves to be willing to see it. We have to create a willing container in our spirits, in our minds, and in our hearts. We have to learn to listen for God and to see God. We have to be attuned to the Spirit, and we have to be absolutely present in each and every moment. See, it's hard to understand who God is. If somebody says, "Who is God to you?" how would you say it? How would you define God? One of the best ways that I've been able to describe God is that God is ultimate reality. God is the here and the now, the right now, in this moment. God is not something up in the sky that we can have some theory about. God is not something that happened in the past. God is not something that's going to be here in the future. God is right now in the very present reality. So how do we learn to listen and see? How do we be attuned to the Spirit? How do we be present in each and every moment? We have to practice. We have to practice these things. I don't know how many of you have been watching the Olympics. I haven't watched this year as much as I usually do. But one thing that strikes me is how graceful these athletes are, especially the figure skaters. Have you ever been watching figure skating? To see these people on ice skates make it look so graceful and easy, and it looks like you could become an expert just by watching it over and over. It just looks so nice and beautiful. But then you put on the ice skates and you go to an ice skating rink and you look like Bambi trying to learn to walk. It's difficult. It's hard. And these athletes put in decades of hours of work to make it look so easy, to make it look like it's something that anybody could do. But they put in these hours of work, these hours of practice, so that when the moment comes, they can be free. Things that they might not expect to happen can happen on the ice because they're so prepared. They can go with it. They can become even more extraordinary. And they make it look easy. But we too have to practice. We too have to learn how to listen. We too have to learn how to look and see the world around us. We too have to learn how to be attuned to the Spirit. We too have to learn how to be present in each and every moment. It is difficult stuff to do. And as I say about so much, it's not that we get it right over and over. It's that we always go back to trying. Our intention is important. So it's important to practice so that we're ready and prepared for Christ to appear or God's voice to speak. So we have to create a willing container, but we also have to be willing to follow Jesus and follow the Spirit. I'm sure that Peter, James, and John had no idea where Jesus was taking them or what Jesus was about to do. They might have thought it was strange that Jesus was leading them up this mountainside and only taking the three of them. But we too have to be willing to follow Jesus. Now, unfortunately, we don't have Jesus holding our hands, taking us somewhere. And so that means that we have to be following the guidance that Jesus gave us. We have to be following the lessons that Jesus taught his disciples, and we have to apply them to our own lives. And the simplest way to do that is ask the two questions of the greatest commandment. How do I follow God, and how do I love my neighbor? If we ask these questions over and over, and we answer them, then we're going to start to be following Jesus, following Jesus' guidance. And, we might start to feel these instincts that we get internally. Do you ever have those pushes and pulls? You're like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to say that. I don't know. There's these things inside that you edit immensely. Well, perhaps we need to start following those, because those might be the pushings and pullings of the Spirit. That might be how we follow Jesus in our days today. It's taking a risk. But following Jesus is risky. And finally, we have to expect a transfigurative experience to take place in the ordinary and know that it'll be momentary. It'll happen in the ordinary and it will be momentary. Remember, God uses the ordinary to create a sacred extraordinary. Expect Christ to be revealed in common everyday moments, in common everyday places. Sure, it can happen anywhere. It can happen in a beautiful basilica. It can happen in a beautiful natural space. It can happen in some really religious, iconic location. But I don't believe that's because that's only where God is. I believe that's because we open our spirits there to be able to experience Christ. We need to have our spirits open at all times, in all places, because God works mainly in the ordinary. I firmly believe it. Look at the items on the table of the communion. It's ordinary bread, it's ordinary juice or wine that God works through. God is present at all times, in all things. Even as we dress our kids for school, or washing the dishes, or cleaning up our puppy's accident after the third time of the day on the carpet in the house. God is always present and often uses the ordinary moments to create a sacred, extraordinary experience. But it will also be momentary, and this is important. The Celts have this beautiful understanding of the veil of separation between the spirit world and the earthly world, the human world. And every now and then, God lifts up that veil, and we're able to get a glimpse of the glory of God. But eventually, that veil closes, and we come back to being fully present in this world. Jesus only transfigured for a short moment. Before Peter, James, and John knew it, the moment was over. The moment had passed. Jesus was taking them back down the mountain. We are called on this earth for as long as we're called. We're walking this earth as long as we're alive, and it's an important time. But God gives us a glimpse of God's glory in order to uplift us, to empower us, and to remind us that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. We're called to this world for now, not to live in the heavenly realm yet, but to create heaven on earth, to build the beloved community, as Dr. King teaches us. We're here to do God's work as we walk in this earthly realm. Spirituality isn't meant to get us to heaven. It's meant to create a better heaven and a better earth. God has all the rest. We have the power to create the world we want to create here and now. So God uses the ordinary to create the extraordinary. But that extraordinary is going to be momentary. So what might this look like? How do we see God transfigured in our everyday moments through the ordinary? I had a colleague in seminary tell a wonderful story about her grandmother. Her grandmother was sick and was passing away. She couldn't talk. She couldn't get out of bed. And so my colleague told us that she simply got into bed with her and curled up against her. And in that moment, she felt the transfiguration happen, that divine union between the two of them and God. God was present for her in that simple exchange of hugging each other. It happened to me. And when I was in seminary, we had this, it was during the Occupy Wall Street movement. I was in New York City, so a group of us went down to Zuccotti Park, and we became what we called protest chaplains. So we would spend our nights and our days there, and we would be chaplains for those that were living in the park. And one day I was simply having a conversation with somebody, and we were talking, I don't remember what we were talking about, but I remember the moment when I realized this wasn't a conversation. This was a spiritual moment where we were sharing something between the two of us, And it was special. It was a divine moment, and God was present in this conversation. It's going to happen to us in a flicker of an eye. We might not even realize it until it's over. But the beautiful thing about these momentary times is that it creates a longing in us, a longing that makes us want more and more and more, and allows us to seek to do the work in greater ways. It creates us gives us an uplift and something to feed us as we walk throughout this world. God creates the extraordinary out of the ordinary. And the revelation of Christ in these ordinary moments are meant to uplift us, sustain us, and empower us. And so on this Valentine's / Transfiguration Sunday / Mardi Gras Sunday, let us celebrate. It is a day of joy. The blessings of this world, the work of God, and the realization that Christ is present with us today is a moment of celebration. So let us welcome the diversity of the world and create something new out of our own distinctions. Let us taste the glory of God through our extraordinary food made from ordinary ingredients cooked in unique ways. Let us dance to God's music and bounce to God's beat. Let us live, laugh, and love, knowing that God is here, God is near, and at any moment God can appear and remind us that we are loved, we are called, and we are precious in God's sight. Transfiguration was a gift. And it can happen at any moment, at any time, and probably through the ordinary moments of our day. Let us be open to Christ's presence here with us now. Amen.